and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and today we're going to continue the next part of our 32 for 32 series with a look at the New Orleans Saints. 12-4 season last year, truly looked like the most complete version of themselves that we had seen in quite some time, came into playoffs healthy, beat the Bears in the wild card round, even with Mitch Trubisky taking away the Nickelodeon MVP award, but ultimately failed against the Buccaneers in the divisional round. Now Drew Brees, the only thing that, I guess him and Peyton, but Drew Brees, longtime, obviously franchise, future Hall of Fame quarterback, should be out of the picture. Salary cap is a freaking disaster. We have a lot of things to talk about with the Saints ahead of next season. I brought in a very special guest to help me do so. He covers the Saints at NewOrleans.Football. That's NewOrleans.Football. Love it. Who needs it.com these days. Nick Underhill. You can find him on Twitter at Nick_Underhill. Nick, thanks for the time, man. Happy offseason.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, again, a lot of stuff to talk about here with the Saints. I'm sure we'll get into the cap situation, but nobody is further over the cap ahead of 2021. Obviously, that's going to mean a lot of offseason movements. So we're going to start things off, as always, with our team needs, get a couple gut feel questions from Nick, and then finally send him on his way with a bold call. So, Nick, let's start things off with your 3 team needs for the 2021 Saints.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first one, and you mentioned it, is getting under the cap, and I don't think it's as dire as a lot of people make it out to be. There's some stuff they can do to, they can get to 20 million in space and really only cut Malcolm Brown, Emmanuel Sanders. If they had a locked in quarterback, maybe you don't keep Taysom Hill around. So that'd be one thing, but that's $4 million. So they can get to 16 pretty reasonably with the way they do restructures. They're really aggressive with the way they set up contracts. And the one thing, when a lot of people write these articles about them, they're doing like standard restructures and they aren't putting on 3 voidable years onto a 1-year deal to spread out the hit like they do. Where I think the real problem is going to be is if the situation, with COVID and everything remains the same and the cap stays suppressed. I think 2022 is a year where there might be the real bloodletting with this team. Now they're going to lose some guys, like I said, Emmanuel Sanders, some other people there's some guys definitely in the crosshairs, but that's the main thing though. They got to create some space. Second team need, I think it's definitely quarterback. If Brees retires, and right now I'm expecting that he will, it seems like everything's pointing that direction. They got to get somebody in there. I know they like Jameis Winston a lot. He did a lot of things behind the scenes that they liked. He, even during training camp this year, he was making throws, and I've been here since 2014, save for 1 year. He was making throws in camp that we just didn't see anybody else make during that time because he has a better arm than some of these other people. It's the decision making and all that stuff. And for us on the outside, that's impossible to gauge. The one thing I would say, I think maybe the confidence in Taysom Hill was a little misguided. I guess in a perfect setting in practice where you're evaluating him, making throws and everything's clean. He looked good, and he looked good in games when he did that too. It was when things got, a little bit messy and he couldn't throw off script and everything. But the thing I would look at is the growth he made from BYU to the Saints. It's a different quarterback. And if they can take some of that, and Jameis takes to the coaching in the same way, giving them a quarterback with that level of talent, maybe it can work out. And I don't know, the last one I guess would maybe be pass rusher. Trey Hendrickson goes, they're going to need somebody else off the edge. I don't know if you start looking at Zach Bond and say, hey, let's move him back to what he did in college and get something out of him because linebacker didn't go so great. I think weak side linebacker is another one. They're probably going to have to let Quan Alexander go, and Alex Anzalone's a free agent. I don't know if he's the long-term answer. So there's a couple things, but if they can manage the cap and not lose a ton, I don't know if their, needs are super strong outside of quarterback.
Yeah, it's a great point about the ways they can just cut a few guys to save a lot of money immediately. 2022 shaping up to be the rougher year. And I was looking at that, just kind of scrolling down the roster, seeing what guys could feasibly be cut and not leave any dead cap and just save them some money. And Janoris Jenkins, who they would have about $7 million dead cap, but they could save $7 million. And Marshawn Lattimore, they would save about $10 million. Great cornerbacks. I'm sure the Saints don't want to part ways with them, but do you think they could be cap casualties just because of how they are against the situation? Or is there enough room from cutting Brown, from cutting Sanders to hopefully avoid touching those starting corners?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody could theoretically be a cap casualty at this point, especially if you aren't looking at Marshawn and say, hey, he's in our plans beyond this season, or hey, these inconsistencies are too much to deal with. Let's see what the trade market is. I wouldn't be shocked if they made a Brandon Cooks like trade and recouped a first round pick or something. I do think that then creates a huge hole and they got to fill it. And I am interested to see what Richard could do with Lattimore. You get a new secondary coach in there. And if maybe, I think Aaron Glenn was really good at his job. He coached him really hard, but for whatever reason, he just never played every week like he was against Julio Jones or Mike Evans. And, I think we all saw in some games, like he had otherworldly talent, but then it's like the other 10 or 11 where he's just kind of out there, it's just okay. Now, if they can get him to that level every week, that's a huge come up for the team. Jenkins, yeah, he definitely could be one, but that's another guy that I look at and I'm like, well, if they don't want to create a hole, that's where you start throwing on those voidable years, sort of like what they did with Sheldon Rankins, lower his 5th-year option this year. They put on a bunch of voidable years and they get that number down. So that could be a way to keep him. But yeah, I mean, that could end up being a need though. Like if one of those guys have to go, definitely. Yeah. I mean, but again, I think anybody's in the crosshairs, but I think when you look at a rebuild, you're usually looking at a team that has spent money poorly and they got a lot of bad contracts. I don't think the Saints have a lot of bad contracts. So if you start tearing it down, like what's the point? What's the end goal? Like you do got to fix it, but I think you can still compete and clear out some of that, remain competitive, and then, hope and pray that some fans are in the stands and the cap goes up for 2022.
Yeah, I mean, Lattimore's defense too. The guy's still only 24 years old, and when your responsibility in a lot of these games is tracking the number one receiver without much help, like you're probably going to give up more production than someone that doesn't have that same high level of responsibility. Sometimes with these true number one shadow cornerbacks, we got to give them a little bit of a break, when they do get beat by, again, key number one wide receivers. That lesser cornerback wouldn't even draw that responsibility in the first place. Last thing before we move on to some of the gut feel, you mentioned Emmanuel Sanders potentially being, just someone that could be released before a season. Could that lead to a wide receiver being, selected earlier in the draft than we might have thought otherwise? Because we all know Michael Thomas is the one, but it would be nice to kind of get him a legit field stretcher that he hasn't really had since Brandon Cooks. No offense to veteran Ted Ginn, but, it really has been more so of a one wide receiver offense in recent years.
Yeah, it's definitely been way too one-dimensional. And yeah, Ginn was good for 1 year and then he fell off pretty quick and then they didn't have that element. And obviously these other quarterbacks, if it's Taysom, Jameis, Jacoby Brissett, whoever ends up as their quarterback, they're going to probably be able to throw it on the field a little bit more than Brees has in recent years. So yeah, I think that could become a need for them for sure. I think they would like to keep Emmanuel Sanders around. He quietly had a pretty productive season. He missed some time, still put up pretty good numbers. And it took him a while to kind of settle into the offense early in the year. There was a lot of stuff with like timing and rhythm with him and this very precision based offense. And, when they were running like mirrored route concepts, like in the first 3-4 weeks of the season, you'd see Mike Thomas, doing something week 1 against Tampa Bay. And then like Ted's a little bit off on the other side, or Emmanuel's a little bit off on the other side. So once that dialed in, it started to come together. And then he had he got COVID, he was out, and it was just a little bit of off and on for him all year. So I do think he could be really good here. It's just the financials, that is one spot where maybe that becomes a luxury. But, I think they would like to try to keep everybody. They just aren't going to be able to. And he is someone that has that cap number where it's like, well, if they walk away, I believe it's $6 million, it would make some sense.
Yeah. I mean, he's certainly not washed by any extent. I mean, for him to tear his Achilles at the end of 2018, come back in 2019, play 17 games because he got traded halfway through the year. And then in 2020, to your point, still have a more than solid season. Absolutely fantastic from Emmanuel Sanders. Self-proclaimed diva, but I mean, what's wrong with wanting the ball more? I don't see any issues with that. I think sometimes those guys get a bad rap. Great stuff, man. So again, that was a quarterback and then just getting some of, these Malcolm Brown and Emmanuel Sanders, potential guys down to help ease up the salary cap, and then pass rush if Henderson ends up being gone as the 3 main team needs. Now we're going to move on to our gut feel round. Again, Nick and I are recording this on February 5th. Obviously, one trade, one big move could change things, but just as things stand right now, want to get your thoughts on the following topics. And the first one, easy enough, Jameis Winston versus Taysom Hill. How do you see this battle unfolding, or do you see someone else coming in? Because I heard you mention Jacoby Brissett. Yeah,
I would have to go with Jameis. I think that's the guy that they want to have. Sean Payton does not lie during the offseason. Like every year he goes out and he tells everybody exactly what he's going to do. And then the reaction is always smoke screen. I don't know if it's a long con and it's, he's playing it like he does during the season and he's setting things up to go off tendency 5 years later or something. But, it could be, but he seems very open about wanting Jameis back and to be the guy. But again, if they're going to set their price and if somebody throws a crazy number at him, they move on and start looking at other options. So I do think it is going to be Jameis. So in their perfect world.
Okay. And so makes sense. And that seems to be what the reports have been, even with Brees, telling Jameis is his team after he walks off the field. And I saw a fun quote on Kevin Clark's from The Ringer. He had Sean Payton on his a slow news day segment, which are always fantastic. And he basically asked Sean Payton to defend his feelings on Taysom Hill. Payton basically said his athletic profile would make him desirable to all 31 teams if they made him available for a trade. Could play him at linebacker, safety, tight end, QB. Man, do you buy this, or is this Peyton just really defending his love affair with Taysom Hill? Which, I'm not trying to hate on Taysom. To your point, he improved so much after BYU. He was the best player on the field in that Vikings playoff game. He can do big things, but man, like a $16 million cap hit. Is this just Peyton defending this guy, or do you think he does? Is the Saints offense worse with Taysom Hill part of it, basically?
Man. Well, first of all, I agree with it. Like if he gave up on quarterback and wanted to be like a strong safety, I would love to see it. Like I would just love to see Taysom lighting guys up over the middle of the field. He already does it when he's running the ball because he's like a one direction guy. But yeah, I think he could do a lot of things, I don't know. There's parts of me sometimes when I watch these games and he gives them the ball and it's just just let Alvin run that. It makes more. So you have this running back, but I do think that, there are things that they do with him that set up other things. I do think that teams have to spend time on him. All that stuff does matter. Is he worth $16 million without the upside of being a starting quarterback? No, probably not. But they paid him to wait his turn. They had to find out. I think they found out negatively. But yeah, I wouldn't pay him $16 million to be, a part-time tight end, run the ball a few times, have some gadget plays or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, I do know that they love him as a football player. If it's not quarterback, I think if you get that price way down, he does have a lot of value. Like another team, if you could trade for him and get him for $4 million, I think a lot of teams probably would want him on their team for that price. But it's 16, obviously that's really high if he's not going to be your starting quarterback.
Yeah, in fantasy football, we like to say, we never hate players. We just hate their average draft position. Same thing with the NFL. None of us hate Taysom Hill, but $16 million associated with it. That's when things start to get a little bit quirky. All right. I want to talk about Michael Thomas because we've said before, you said about Jameis that, you guys just literally haven't seen Saints quarterbacks making the type of throws that he was making out there. And I feel like Michael Thomas, he's getting called slant boy every other day on Twitter sphere, probably every day for all we know, but I think it's unfair, man. The guy breaks the NFL record for receptions in 2019. You want to call him a slant boy. So you're saying that he's one dimensional, but no one could stop it anyway. I think it could have more to do with the fact that he's had Drew Brees, not, king of arm strength over the last couple of years. And, Taysom Hill, part-time tight end throwing the ball. It's weird to say someone could have a higher ceiling with a different quarterback when they've already broken the freaking single season reception record. But do you think we could actually see a more complete version of Thomas with Jameis under center?
Yeah, I don't know if it would manifest in like a yardage total. Obviously that would be hard to get back to that, or catches, but you go back to his rookie season, there was more stuff down the field. Like the San Francisco game in 2016, he was making a lot of plays on vertical routes. And when he was out this year with Taysom, Taysom has a little bit bigger of an arm. It didn't show up last year when Teddy Bridgewater was starting. Taysom has a little bit of a bigger arm. It started going downfield more, and he was making more plays down the field. Like you mentioned that, people get on him about the slants. The record-breaking season, you take the slants away, he still leads the league in yardage. So, I don't even understand that criticism. Like, I get it if you're starting to rank players, but I don't know if that's something that you should hold against somebody. Like, if Shaq can dunk on you 45 times a game in the paint, just keep giving him the ball in the paint and let him get 90 points. I don't get it. Like if you can't stop it, just keep doing it. And that's kind of what they did. And Mike delivered on it. But yeah, I do believe with the different quarterback, the offense changes. You start looking at the way the Saints operated starting in about 2015, it started getting more and more condensed. A lot of their route concepts had vertical routes and they turned them into these giant routes, which are basically 15 to 18 yard crossing routes down the field. And just over time, it continued to come back more and more in. And, I think Mike just played his role with Brees and that's the player he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be, a deep threat or anything like that, but intermediate routes, more out routes down the field, stuff like that. Yeah, definitely. I think you'll see more of that with a different QB.
Yeah, and it's just really, he hasn't had the opportunities to run those types of routes. It's not like he is and they're not hitting them. Since he's entered the league in 2016, he's had 36 catchable targets thrown at least 20 yards downfield. He's caught 33 of them. It's the fourth best rate among 64 qualified receivers. He's making his living underneath, but I love the Shaq example. And yeah, no one's saying, hey, Steph Curry, quit shooting threes. If you don't like it, freaking stop it. It should be easier for you if he truly is that one dimensional. I want one more main thing about the offense because, Alvin Kamara, when Taysom Hill came under center, the fantasy community was losing our freaking minds because he only had 6 targets in 3 games. Last game with Taysom Hill, he did have 7 receptions and then, got back to Brees under center. If Jameis is going to be under center, would you still expect Kamara to be in that kind of 80 catch range? He went 81 receptions 3 straight years and only had, had 83 this last year. But basically, are you really concerned about Kamara's pass game role without Brees, or is that, locked into this offense regardless of who the quarterback is?
Yeah, I think Jameis will probably do a better job of getting to his check down than Taysom did. I think that was a big issue, just getting through those reads. And the thing with Taysom, like when it came to that, like do or die, and I think the do or die is like go to Alvin or run. Like he just wasn't making those decisions quickly enough. And I think with Jameis, you would see that. The other thing too in those games, if you look at Alvin's career production, like there's one big game against Atlanta, and like the rest of them are just kind of like mediocre to okay. So I think they just play him really well on top of that. So you got a quarterback like who's not getting through his reads, and a team that defends a player well, like it just kind of took him out of a lot of those games. But yeah, regardless, as long as it's not Taysom, like if Taysom's the quarterback, I don't know how that would impact Alvin. I don't know if there's that growth and development, and they get him to that check down quicker. But I think Jameis or whoever else would probably go there really quickly as a security blanket. And I don't think there's a better security blanket on this team than just getting the ball out to Alvin and letting them make a few guys miss and do his thing. So I do think that, with Jameis, that number would be safe for the fantasy community.
Yeah, we're all pulling for Jameis to win that job. Because if not, Taysom is going to be a great late round QB because he runs it in from inside the 5 and stuff. And he has that, we call it the Konami code. When you have that QB rushing production, it's basically a cheat code in fantasy land. But yeah, certainly doesn't help Alvin Kamara or those other guys. Last thing before we get your bull call, I've seen some reports indicate Jared Cook could be on his way out because it would save about $9 million in cap space. Obviously, they drafted Adam Trautman highly last year, and he got more snaps as the year went on. Do you see Jared Cook being on the team next year? And if not, do you see Adam Trautman being more of a full-time tight end or part of a committee? Because it seems like they've been looking for, that next Jimmy Graham for a while. We had the Kobe Fleener experiment. Josh Hill's been there, and now Jared Cook. Mixed success, but I'm basically wondering if Cook's gone, could Trautman finally be that kind of stud tight end they've been looking for?
Yeah, so I think Cook's probably definitely gone, at least at that price. They got to cut him, I think, by the second day of the league year to avoid like a $8 million roster bonus. There's no way they're going to pay him that. Like, could you bring him back on a minimal deal? Maybe. I think Trautman showed a lot of flashes this year, and that they do like him a lot. But I do think there is like a lot of development from what we've seen to what they would need him to be the full-time tight end one. Like he could make that over the course of the offseason. Last year, rookies coming in, it was weird. He came from a small school. There was a lot of development that needed to take place. And I think all those signs are positive. I think he definitely has a shot at it. I think they would like him, even if Cook's back, to become the guy. I don't think Cook's delivered really how they want him to. The big question there is like, with Drew, if you're the tight end on this team and their 2-minute and 4-minute offense, like it's just a cheat code for the tight ends. Like they're open like the whole time through that. And you mentioned Fleener. Like Fleener had like, I don't know, like 600 or 700 yards one year. And like, I did the math on it and it was like 83% of it came in those situations where they were in the hurry up and like, there was nothing else anywhere else. And they just get those yards. So it'll be a different QB. I don't know how the tight end will fit into that, but it's tough. Sitting here right now, like projecting Trautman is dangerous during training camp. If we see it, yeah, obviously, but I think there's a long way to go from now until then. But I do like his upside.
Yeah, it's always tough. I remember last year in the offseason, one of my favorite late round fantasy picks was Jay Sternberger, Green Bay Packers tight end, because it was a crowded situation. Robert Tonyan ends up scoring, 12 touchdowns. So Don't always know how things are shaping up as it stands in February before all that goes on. Nick, great stuff. Do you have a bold offseason prediction for us before we get you out of here?
Bold offseason prediction.
Draft. Someone might get cut that we're not expecting. Maybe just a position they really try to address.
Yeah, so I guess my boldest one, I guess the one that I think I would want to see, and this is going to suck for fantasy people, but just for the Saints, like I feel like they need to move Bond back to pass rusher and take him off a linebacker. The off the ball he was a good pass rusher in college, and they want him to play middle linebacker. Like I think that's quite a stretch for them. So that would be my bold one there. Offensively, I don't really have one, man. Like I feel like the team's kind of set and people know what they are. Like Latavius Murray, Alvin, those are known commodities. The only bold one there would be Trautman, but I'm not comfortable making that call right now. So I'll just stick with Bond and kind of duck out of here safely.
Okay, fair enough, man. Well, we appreciate the time. Again, everyone, make sure you follow Nick on Twitter at Nick_Underhill. I mean, I'm truly man, you are one of the best reporters in the business, not just Saints overall. Nick has articles out. He's done them before where he's reviewed every single Drew Brees career pass attempt. And like, sometimes I know I read articles where you wonder if someone's watching the film. Nick is watching the freaking film, people. There's no doubt about that. Where can the people find your stuff, Nick?
Yeah, it's at NewOrleans.Football, and I'm on Twitter at Nick_Underhill.
Great stuff from Nick. Make sure you follow him over there. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. He's Nick. I'm Ian. This has been the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. And until next time, take care, everybody.